in terms of the values that you regard as being under assault in this war. What do you think the canonical values are that are the subject of this intense criticism? Now, and you described Marxism itself, which is also a branch of Western thought, interestingly enough, as fundamental to this criticism. So what, if it isn't, the Marxists basically make the claim that something like the claim that history and human institutions, and perhaps individuals as well, are to be understood as manifestations of their class identity. So as some form of group identity. For the classical Marxists, it was class identity. And then history is to be viewed as the battle between an oppressor class and an oppressed class. And the oppressor class is motivated by the desire to exploit the victimized class. And then that's been transferred, I would say, to some degree in recent years to terminology that replaces economic class with race, but basically makes the same arguments. Does that seem okay? So so the claim then is that the central motivation is something like the will to use compulsion in the service of group-centered goals, I guess. What's the Western counterclaim, and why? So that's one question. Is there a Western counterclaim, and why should we reject that analysis of history, given that things do get corrupted by power?
Well, I quote in the opening and later on in the book, as you know, a phrase of Nietzsche, which I sort of add to from the genealogy of morals. When Nietzsche refers in passing, but I think it's such a remarkable phrase, I wanted to bring it out and throw it to the forefront. He talks in the genealogy of morals of people who talk about justice but mean revenge. Now, this seems to me to be an extraordinarily pertinent insight to our era. When you talk about some of the scholars and writers that I try to tear into in this book, they have. I'm thinking of figures like Ibram X. Kendi, Robin DiAngelo, quite a number of others. I could go on listing, but these are some of the main ones. They're simply not interested, it's clear, in a sort of fair analysis of the West or its history or its traditions or its claims. They're interested in a form of revenge. And some of them are perfectly open about that. I mean, Kendi is perfectly open about the fact that in response to one thing, it might be necessary to punish another group. He says it completely frankly in his most famous book, How to Be, ironically titled, inappropriately titled, How to Be an Anti-Racist. And it's extremely clear from the work of other people in this movement, people like Hannah Nicole Jones of the 1619 Project. What you're really talking about, you're certainly talking about with the people tearing down the heroes of the West, is people who are saying, okay, you had your go, and now we're going to have ours, and we're going to see how you like it, how you like being talked about in extraordinarily racist terms, how you like being lumped in and homogenized as a group, for instance, white people or Western people, Western traditions. And again, this isn't an entirely new thing. I point out again with one of the most prominent post-colonial writers, Edward Said, who every benighted student who's had to study at almost any university has come across Orientalism at some point. And one of Said's fundamental critiques of the West is that it essentializes people in the East. And, you know, there's quite a lot of points to make about that, but one of them is he's extremely good at essentializing people in the West. You know, he'll refer in passing, Said, to, for instance, your average 19th century European. Like, what the hell was an average 19th century European any more than a average 19th century person in Africa or the Arabian Peninsula? You know, people of this revenge kind were extraordinarily keen to use tools which they claimed to deprecate, so long as that they furthered their particular political goals. And I think that they expose themselves again and again. And the problem in recent years, as I see it in the West, is that this process of revenge has taken on this exceptionally gleeful attitude. people like D'Angelo visibly, audibly cannot believe the luck they have that they can get away with saying the things that they do. And the fact that when asked to provide evidence, they say things like D'Angelo did recently in an interview. There's a collective glee in the white body when black bodies are punished. And her interviewer, who happens to be black, asks her for evidence of this. She has none. So she just makes another outrageous claim. And this has become part of it.
Okay.
This whole new booming economy of grievance politics, of oppressor politics and oppressed politics, identity politics, has become so infused lately and basically married with the Black Lives movement, Black Lives, Matter movement, with the Me Too movement, with all of these, and has really brought to the forefront many of these writers, as Douglas basically said, are just so lucky in in the respect that they're able to utter their platforms, their narratives, without being called out as racists themselves. I mean, Ibram X. Kendi, who actually was born Henry Rogers, folks, and imported the name X. Kendi, and then all of a sudden writes a book, how to be an anti-racist, in order to correct the racism of the past. It is okay to bring racism into the present and into the future. In other words, correct the wrongs of the past with more wrongs into the future. And then Robin DiAngelo with the racist attitudes. But if you bring this up, that thing is going to be hurled right back at you. And that's exactly what's going on right now. Jones, the 1619 Project, the lies that are being percolated, that are being developed, that are being thrown out there. And nobody presses it back. And if somebody does, they're now called the oppressor. They're now called the racist. They're now called the bigot. They're now called the person that's coming from an institutionalized racist agenda. And all this is happening and swirling around right now, okay? It was there. We thought this was going to end or something with the election of Barack Obama back in 2008. But this just was percolating there. And then literally, the pendulum swung when the Black Lives Movement came into force. And remember, the riots that were going on, what were we being told? Oh, it's just a pressure release valve. People need to release their pressure because they've been oppressed for so long here in the United States of America. And that marginalized people, the blacks, these people to riot. It's a pressure release valve. They need to steal. They need to, throw bricks through windows, grab ATM machines and try to, get into them. Burglarize businesses that are owned by minority groups. Doesn't matter. This is just part of the thing. It's just pent-up frustration. Just let them do it. Doesn't matter if they're causing billions of dollars worth of damage. And on top of this, you've got white elites, white liberal elites, those social justice warriors, virtue signaling, polishing their halos every single day before they go to bed at night so they can stick it in their back and have that halo shine in the morning and the whole day saying, look at me. I'm taking on your problems. I'm fighting for you. I'm fighting for you because you've been oppressed. I know it because my people have done the oppressing. Now it's going to change. That's what's happening over here. That's what Douglas is talking about. The pendulum is starting to swing back. Now, the Black Lives Movement, that literally has come almost to a halt right now. Ibram X. Kendi, he's being called out. You talk about, when you go woke, you go broke. That's happening to so many of these companies. DEI is going to DIE. DEI is going to die. Eventually, folks, that pendulum swung so far to one side that it is starting to come back. The battles are starting because people are now looking at this and they're saying, what the hell are you talking about? Ibrahim X. Kendi was given a post at Boston College or Boston University, $10 million to make a think tank on racism. Nobody knows where the money went to. I think they did like 2 papers that were done, 3 or 4 pieces of paper, like 4 or 5 pages long. That's all that was accomplished in a few years, with him being at the head of the post. A think tank on how to solve the problems of racism. That was an agenda. This was going to be a huge, huge project, bringing people from all over the world, all over the country. Writers, journalists, academia. $10 million. Nobody knows where the money went to. People, they just started firing people. They didn't have the money to pay them. This is what happens, folks. This is what Douglas is talking about. It's amazing. Absolutely amazing. Anyways, we appreciate you taking the time to watch. You've been watching the Dr. Nasir Shaikh Show. I've been your host. My name is Dr. Nasir. If you've been done so already, we'd love for you to subscribe to the channel, like, share, and follow us. Check out our other links to these interviews here and below. My final thought is always, when you're right, you're right. And when you're left, you're wrong. Until next time, folks, take care and stay safe.